In the annals of human history, there exists a chapter so horrifying, so unimaginable, that it stands as a chilling testament to the depths of human cruelty. In 1941, Germany's power launched a campaign full of terror and genocide, where millions of innocent lives were extinguished, families torn apart, and a continent plunged into an abyss of despair. This campaign was known as the Holocaust. A dark stain on the canvas of civilization, unfolded during the tumultuous years of World War II, leaving an indelible mark on the collective conscience of humanity. But behind this campaign of terror and genocide, there was a shadowy group, operating on the works of evil and playing the symphony of suffering, leading us to question, who were the masterminds behind this tragic event? In this video, we will unmask the faces of evil, and we will understand the minds that conceived the unimaginable, and to confront a chapter of history that demands both remembrance and understanding. This is the untold story of the orchestrators of the Holocaust, a tale of power, hatred, and the unstoppable strength of the human spirit. This is the shocking story of the puppets of evil, the Germany's most horrific network. Adolf Hitler is considered as the top perpetrator behind the Holocaust. Hitler's journey to launching the Holocaust was a descent into the darkest realms of human malevolence, a tragic symphony of hatred and power. In the aftermath of World War I, Germany lay shattered and humiliated, its spirit crushed under the weight of defeat. Enter Adolf Hitler, a charismatic, powerful speaker whose passionate words resonated with a wounded nation desperate for a scapegoat. Hitler rose to power in 1933, promising a revitalized Germany and a restoration of its former glory. Yet, beneath his charismatic facade, a poisonous belief grew and spread. Driven by a strong anti-Semitic fervor, Hitler's vision was poisoned by an extreme belief in Aryan superiority and a harmful desire for racial purity. Adolf Hitler's rise to power in Germany was a calculated and frightening journey that would reshape the course of history. Born in Austria in 1889, Hitler's early life was marked by failed artistic pursuits, but his destiny took a sinister turn as he found his voice in the political turmoil that followed World War I. After the end of World War I, Germany lay in ruins, burdened by the weight of defeat and the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Economic hardship, political instability, and a sense of national humiliation created a fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root. In the early 1920s, Hitler found a platform for his radical views in the German Workers' Party, which he soon transformed into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, or the Nazi Party. The swastika became the emblem of a movement that blended nationalism, anti-Semitism, and anti-communism, resonating with those yearning for a scapegoat and a promise of national revival. In 1923, Hitler and his followers attempted to overthrow the Weimar government in what became known as the Beer Hall Putsch. However, the coup failed, leading to Hitler's arrest and imprisonment. It was during this time that he penned Mein Kampf, a venomous manifesto outlining his vision for a racially pure, authoritarian state. The fragile democratic experiment of the Weimar Republic struggled amid economic crises and political strife. Hitler capitalized on disillusionment, blaming the Republic's democratic foundations, perceived Jewish influence, and the alleged betrayal of the German people for the nation's woes. Upon his release from prison, Hitler focused on expanding the Nazi Party's influence. His remarkable speaking skills, coupled with Joseph Goebbels' masterful propaganda, captivated the masses. The Nazis exploited modern media, utilizing newspapers, radio, and mass rallies to spread their message of hate and superiority. In the early 1930s, economic hardship intensified, and political polarization deepened. The Nazis, previously on the political fringes, began winning significant support. In the 1930 and 1932 elections, The NSDAP became the largest party in the Reichstag, with Hitler appointed chancellor in 1933. Hitler swiftly moved to consolidate power, using the Reichstag fire as a pretext to push through the Enabling Act of 1933. This law basically gave Hitler the power of a dictator and got rid of the democratic systems of the Weimar Republic. To eliminate potential rivals, Hitler ordered the purge known as the Night of the Long Knives in 1934. Key figures within the Nazi Party, as well as perceived opponents, were brutally murdered, solidifying Hitler's absolute control. In 1934, upon President Paul von Hindenburg's death, Hitler combined the roles of president and chancellor, declaring himself Führer und Reichskanzler, or leader and chancellor. The cult of personality around Hitler reached its zenith as the Nazi regime transformed into a totalitarian state. Adolf Hitler's rise to power stands as a cautionary tale of how a leader, taking advantage of a nation's weaknesses, can manipulate democracy's mechanisms to establish tyranny. The consequences of Hitler's rise still affect history, serving as a stark reminder of the fragility of democracy and the dangers posed by unchecked authoritarianism. Adolf Hitler's deep-seated anti-Semitism and vision for a racially pure Germany were central to his ideology, outlined in his infamous manifesto, Mein Kampf, and became the driving force behind the atrocities of the Holocaust and his broader political ambitions. Hitler's anti-Semitic sentiments can be traced back to his formative years in Vienna, where he absorbed prevalent anti-Jewish prejudices. Influenced by nationalist and anti-Semitic thinkers of the time, he developed a conspiratorial view that blamed Jews for Germany's perceived societal and economic problems. In Mein Kampf, written during his imprisonment after the beer hall putsch in the early 1920s, Hitler laid out his virulent ideology. He propagated a warped worldview, asserting the supremacy of the Aryan race and promoting an extreme form of anti-Semitism. He described Jews as a malevolent force, accusing them of conspiring to control the world and undermining the purity of the German race. Hitler exploited existing anti-Jewish sentiments, blaming Jews for Germany's defeat in World War I, economic hardships during the Weimar Republic, and perceived moral decay. He framed them as an internal enemy, an other responsible for the nation's woes. Once in power, Hitler implemented discriminatory policies against Jews. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 stripped German Jews of their citizenship and prohibited marriages between Jews and non-Jews. These laws institutionalized anti-Semitism and laid the groundwork for more extreme measures. Parallel to his anti-Semitic beliefs, Hitler envisioned a racially pure Germany, free from what he deemed undesirable elements. This concept of racial purity, often referred to as Aryan supremacy, sought to eliminate perceived threats to the purity of the Germanic race, including Jews, Romani people, and even German people with disabilities. Hitler viewed the world as an arena for the permanent struggle between peoples. He divided the world population into high and low races. The Germans belonged to the high peoples and the Jews to the low ones. He also had specific notions about other peoples. The Slavic people, for instance, were cast as inferior, predestined to be dominated. Hitler felt that the German people could only be strong if they were pure. As a consequence, people with hereditary diseases were considered harmful. These included people with physical or mental disabilities, as well as alcoholics and incorrigible criminals. Once the Nazis had come to power, these ideas led to the forced sterilization and the mass loss of human lives. As World War II unfolded, Hitler's anti-Semitic rhetoric escalated into genocidal actions. Confronted with the daunting task of purifying an entire nation, he needed a strategic plan to execute his vision without jeopardizing his reputation and ending up with a racially pure Germany. And so, what happened next was truly the birth of a new dark evil. In the shadows of Hitler's pursuit of a racially pure Germany, he found an enigmatic and highly intelligent ally whose brilliance matched the darkness of the dictator's ambitions. This mysterious figure, operating behind the scenes, brought a calculated and strategic mind to the implementation of Hitler's vision. He was known as Heinrich Himmler, the right hand of the Nazi Adolf Hitler. Heinrich Himmler was born in Munich, Germany, on October 7, 1900. When he was young, he really wanted to join the army, but by the time he was old enough to enlist, World War I had ended, and the Treaty of Versailles made it hard for Germany to have a big military. So, Himmler decided to study agriculture instead. While he was in university, he joined a group that believed strongly in Germany and read books that said some races were better than others. These ideas were popular with some Germans after the war. When Himmler finished university in 1922, he was really passionate about Germany and its ideas. In August 1923, Himmler became a member of the Nazi Party. He really looked up to the party's leader, Adolf Hitler, and even left his job to work full-time for the party. On November 9, 1923, he marched with Hitler and other Nazi leaders in the Beer Hall Putsch, a plan that didn't work and put Hitler in jail for a while. Himmler used this time to build his reputation in the Nazi Party. He gave many speeches talking about the German race, why Germany should grow, and the challenges Germany faced from its enemies. In 1929, Hitler made Himmler the leader of the SS, a group that protected Hitler and other important Nazis. Himmler wanted to make the SS really special, like an elite part of the Nazi Party. When he started, there were 280 people in the SS, but by 1933, when the Nazis took over, there were 52,000. Himmler gave the SS two new jobs: keeping things secure inside the country and making sure the German race stayed pure. In 1931, he created the SD, a group that gathered information and watched people who might be against the Nazi Party. In 1934, the SD became the main intelligence agency in Germany. Then, in 1939, Himmler fused the SD with the Reich Security Main Office, RSHA. Following the Nazis' invasion of Poland, in 1939, Hitler appointed Himmler as the Reich Commissar for the strengthening of the German ethnic stock. This new position authorized Himmler and the SS to have complete control over German resettlement in areas of occupied Poland and eventually the Soviet Union in 1941. Himmler had complete say over who was German, where ethnic Germans should live, and which populations should be moved out or destroyed to make room for resettled Germans. Up to this point, Himmler was craving to earn Hitler's trust, and to demonstrate his commitment to the dark vision of purifying Germany, he devised a sinister plan. Recognizing Hitler's extreme anti-Semitic views, Himmler proposed the implementation of the final solution in the early 1940s. This genocidal plan aimed at systematically exterminating millions of European Jews through the establishment of concentration and extermination camps. Himmler, as the head of the SS, oversaw the logistics of this horrifying operation, orchestrating the mass murder of innocent people in what would later be infamously known as the Holocaust. Himmler's role in planning and executing the final solution solidified his position as a chief architect of one of the darkest chapters in human history. As Himmler delved deeper into the implementation of the final solution and the orchestration of the Holocaust, he recognized the need for a key figure to help refine and execute the chilling plan. In his pursuit of the architect of this dark vision, Himmler's search led him to an individual whose cunning intellect and ruthless efficiency matched the enormity of the task at hand. This shadowy figure, shrouded in secrecy, held the key to organize the detailed plans needed to carry out the mass extermination of millions. As they worked together, the alliance between Himmler and this enigmatic strategist would propel the Holocaust into a horrifying reality, leaving an indelible mark on history and forever staining the conscience of humanity. So, who was this person? Reinhard Heydrich came into the world on March 7, 1904, in Halle an der Saale, a little town not far from Leipzig in Saxony, Germany. When he was a baby, he got baptized in the Roman Catholic tradition. His dad, Bruno Heydrich, was a singer who loved opera. He even started a music school in Halle back in 1901. So music was a big part of Heydrich's family from the very beginning. After World War I and all its troubles, Bruno Heydrich had a tough time keeping his music school going because of the war's effects on the economy. Money was tight for Heydrich's family, and during his teenage years, Heydrich got drawn to a kind of nationalist thinking that was tied to some racist ideas. He saw protests, strikes, and street fights in his hometown of Halle during the last year of the war and the chaos that came after. In the spring of 1922, Heydrich finished high school. Even though he was really good at playing the violin, which his dad hoped would be his future, Heydrich surprised everyone by joining the German Navy on March 30th, 1922, just a month after turning 18. When Heydrich worked in the Navy, he focused on signals and talking with others. He had promised to marry a girl whose dad was a big deal in the Navy, but changed his mind and married another woman named Lena von Osten. This caused a big problem, and during a meeting to discuss his actions, Heydrich didn't show much respect. The people in charge were upset, saying he disrespected the Navy, so in April 1931, he had to leave his job. The interesting part? The new lady he married was really into the National Socialist ideas. Seeking his wife's help, Heydrich met Heinrich Himmler through a family friend in Munich. Back then, Himmler wanted to set up a kind of spy service for the Nazi Party. Heydrich had some smart ideas, and Himmler liked them so much that he brought Heydrich into the SS in August 1931. Himmler gave him the job of creating the security service, Sicherheitsdienst, or the SD. By January 1933, under Heydrich's leadership, the SD became the main spy agency for the Nazi Party. In June 1934, the deputy chief of the party, Rudolf Hess, said it was the only group allowed to gather political information inside the Third Reich. When Himmler became the boss of the Bavarian Detective Police on April 1, 1933, he chose Heydrich as his deputy. Together, they brought all the political police teams in Germany under one name, the Gestapo. After the SS became its own thing, separate from the SA in 1934, Heydrich took over the Gestapo while still leading the SD. When Himmler became the top guy for the SS and chief of German police on June 17, 1936, he made Heydrich the head of the new security police main office, Hauptamt Sicherheitspolizei. This office combined the Gestapo and the criminal police teams into one group. From 1936 to 1939, Heydrich's fancy title was Chief of the Security Police and the SD. Once Germany started World War II by going into Poland, Himmler officially connected the security police and SD by creating the Reich Security Main Office, Reichssicherheitshauptamt, the RSHA, on September 27, 1939, and Heydrich was in charge of it all. Reinhard Heydrich led the security police and the SD, making them the main group responsible for figuring out what was happening and taking action against the enemies of the Nazi state, both inside and outside Germany. The SD set up intelligence units to study the long-term plans of different groups considered enemies by the Nazis, including World Jewry, Marxists, like Communists, Social Democrats, and trade unionists, political churches, like Lutherans and Catholic clergy against the regime, and members of other Protestant groups like Jehovah's Witnesses, right-wing nationalist opponents, and Freemasonry. The Gestapo, part of the security police, arrested these opponents, and if needed, they were sent to concentration camps under a protective custody order. Another group known as the Kripo investigated non-political crimes. They arrested people considered dangerous to the Nazi regime, including those with criminal records, homosexuals, Roma and Sinti, known as gypsies, and those behaving in ways the Kripo saw as asocial. They used a protective detention order for indefinite arrests. Heydrich and Himmler shared the belief that visible enemies weren't enough to secure the German race. They saw opponents like communists, intellectuals, and Jews as only the tip of the iceberg. Heydrich believed that true security required destroying the invisible enemies, like Jews, Freemasons, and certain clerics, whose ideologies allegedly came from their racial characteristics. Heydrich argued that the invisible Jewish opponents included not just Jews themselves, but also those who thought like Jews, such as communists, liberals, and Democrats. To fully eliminate the perceived threat, the Nazis believed they had to destroy the genetic basis for such thinking in the Jewish race, as well as in Slavic and Asiatic leadership classes. In 1938, Heydrich, with SS First Lieutenant Adolf Eichmann, played a role in setting up a central station in Vienna to force Jews to emigrate and extort funds from wealthier community members. This marked the beginning of targeted violence against Jews, leading to the infamous Kristallnacht, where nearly 30,000 Jews were rounded up and sent to concentration camps in the hope that it would push them to emigrate faster and leave their assets behind. Heydrich really stood out as a leader when it came to dealing with what the Nazis called the Jewish question. Hermann Göring, who was a big deal and close to Hitler, was so impressed with Heydrich's work that on January 24, 1939, he gave Heydrich the go-ahead to come up with plans to deal with this issue in Germany. Consequently, Reinhard Heydrich came up with a dark idea. creating a secret group that is considered one of the most horrific Nazi networks the world has known. The Einsatzgruppen were units of the SS intelligence service that followed the German army as it invaded and occupied countries in Europe. Often referred to as mobile killing squads, they are best known for their role in the systematic murder of Jews and mass shooting operations on Soviet territory. The atrocities committed by the Nazi regime during World War II are deeply ingrained in history as some of the most terrible crimes against humanity. At the forefront of these atrocities were the Einsatzgruppen, specialized paramilitary death squads tasked with implementing the systematic genocide of millions, particularly targeting Jewish populations. The Einsatzgruppen emerged as a response to Hitler's expansionist ambitions and the invasion of Poland in 1939. Initially, these death squads were tasked with security and rear area operations during military campaigns. However, their role evolved as the Nazi regime's anti-Semitic policies intensified, culminating in the infamous final solution to eradicate the Jewish population. The Einsatzgruppen were formed under the command of Reinhard Heydrich, and their primary mission was to eliminate perceived enemies of the Reich, particularly Jews, through mass shootings and other brutal methods. The Einsatzgruppen were responsible for carrying out mass shootings, rounding up and executing civilians, intellectuals, and anyone deemed a threat to the Nazi ideology. The methods employed by these death squads were ruthless and designed for maximum efficiency. And just to name a few, we have mass shootings. The most common method employed by the Einsatzgruppen involved rounding up large groups of people, often in secluded areas, and shooting them en masse. Victims were often forced to dig their own graves before being executed. The efficiency of this method allowed the Einsatzgruppen to commit large-scale massacres swiftly. The other method was through mobile killing units. Einsatzgruppen operated in mobile units equipped for mass murder. These units traveled from town to town, rounding up and executing victims. This mobility allowed them to cover vast territories quickly, leaving destruction and death in their wake. Another tactic used was through collaboration with local authorities. In many instances, the Einsatzgruppen collaborated with local authorities and police forces, exploiting anti-Semitic sentiments within occupied territories. This collaboration facilitated the identification and rounding up of Jewish populations for mass executions. And the most evil method was through dehumanization and brutality. The Einsatzgruppen engaged in systematic dehumanization, treating their victims with extreme cruelty. They often subjected individuals to physical and psychological torture before executing them, contributing to the dehumanizing narrative that fueled the Holocaust. The Einsatzgruppen were instrumental in implementing the first phase of the Holocaust, particularly in Eastern Europe. The scale of their operations and the sheer number of victims they claimed are staggering. In the invasion of Poland, 1939, the Einsatzgruppen played a pivotal role, executing intellectuals, political opponents, and Jewish communities. These early operations laid the groundwork for the brutal tactics that would define their actions throughout the war. More than that, as the Nazi invasion progressed into Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, the Einsatzgruppen intensified their genocidal activities. Mass shootings, forced labor, and mass deportations were orchestrated with ruthless precision, leading to the deaths of millions. Then we have the Babi Yar massacre, one of the most infamous atrocities committed by the Einsatzgruppen. In September 1941, over 33,000 Jews were systematically executed in just 2 days. This massacre symbolizes the brutality and scale of the Einsatzgruppen's actions. In addition to collaborating with other units, the Einsatzgruppen collaborated with other Nazi units, including the Waffen-SS and the Wehrmacht. This collaboration extended the reach of their operations and ensured the synchronization of efforts in implementing the final solution. The Einsatzgruppen stands as chilling evidence of the calculated and systematic nature of the Holocaust. Operating with ruthless efficiency, these death squads left an indelible mark on history, perpetrating unimaginable atrocities against millions. The legacy of the Einsatzgruppen serves as a stark reminder of the depths humanity can sink when fueled by hatred, ideology, and a willingness to commit unspeakable acts. Understanding their actions is not only a testament to historical accuracy, but also a solemn commitment to preventing such atrocities from happening again. However, despite all these crimes, What was the fate of this network, and how did it end? As we journey through the tumultuous pages of history, the conclusion of Hitler's reign, the fate of Heinrich Himmler, the demise of Reinhard Heydrich, and the shocking end of the Nazi death squad unfold like a gripping saga of tragedy and reckoning. The downfall of Adolf Hitler marked the turning point in the devastating history of World War II. Facing imminent defeat, Hitler took his own life on April 30th, 1945, in the Führer bunker beneath Berlin. The man who orchestrated the horrors of the Holocaust met his end as the Allies closed in on Germany. The sinister charisma that fueled the Nazi war machine was extinguished, leaving a scar on the pages of history. As for Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the SS and one of Hitler's most trusted henchmen, met a desperate end. Attempting to escape recognition, Himmler disguised himself and attempted to negotiate with the Allies. However, his true identity was discovered, leading to his arrest on May 23, 1945. Faced with imminent justice, Himmler chose to cheat it by committing suicide using a concealed cyanide capsule. While on the other side, Reinhard Heydrich, the sinister mind behind the Holocaust and the chief orchestrator of the Einsatzgruppen, met his end in a daring assassination. On May 27, 1942, Heydrich fell victim to an ambush by Czech resistance fighters in Operation Anthropoid. The repercussions of his death rippled through Nazi leadership, proving that even those with great power were not safe from payback. And as the tide of war shifted against the Nazis, the Einsatzgruppen continued their grisly work until the final days of World War II. Their genocidal campaigns and mass killings persisted in Eastern Europe, leaving an indelible stain on the wartime narrative. However, with the Allied forces closing in, the Einsatzgruppen faced the consequences of their actions. The dark chapters of Hitler's Germany, Himmler's desperate end, Heydrich's assassination, and the haunting legacy of the Einsatzgruppen conclude a chapter in history that must never be forgotten. As we reflect on the demise of those who perpetuated unspeakable horrors, we must ensure that these lessons from history are not lost, and the torch of compassion and understanding is passed on to future generations. It's in our hands to shape a world where such atrocities are never repeated. Together, we can build a future rooted in empathy, tolerance, and peace.